Hey friends, this is Derrick Broze, and I'm running for mayor of Houston. Now, I understand most of you know about my campaign by this point, whether you're following me through from Houston or from elsewhere. But I want to tell you a little bit about the censorship that I've been facing. I've been showing you the forums I've been attending. I've been showing you the meet and greets and how I'm getting out there and talking to people, and I'm trying to inject a real message in there. But I've also have dealt with some censorship or some pushback. There are certain groups like the Houston Millennials and Bay Area Democrats, and there's at least 8 of them that have chosen to exclude the other candidates, 7 candidates, including myself, because we didn't raise enough money, because we haven't previously served in office, or because they claim we're not polling. Now, I definitely know that my campaign is doing better than some of these main candidates that they're promoting, but either way, this is the way the game is being run. But it's not just the local groups that are doing this. There's actually local media that is censoring and pushing back as well and not letting you know the real truth. So I'll give you 2 examples of this, and then I'm going to show you an interview that Fox 26 refused to release. So most of my problems have come with Fox 26. Isaiah Carey, you guys know Isaiah Carey. You've seen the interview that I put with him and me about 5G a few months ago. Well, that interview, that aired before I was even running for office. They lost that interview. It never made it to their website. It never, it was never archived. It just disappeared somehow. And then since I've run for office, I had to contact Isaiah, pressure, mention the fact that the FCC equal airtime rule requires for them to give equal airtime to candidates who reach out. And since Isaiah Carey was interviewing the other candidates, he had to give me equal time. He only did so. He gave me 3 minutes at the end of his show, but he only did so because I pressured him. So some of you may have seen that interview. That was only done because I put pressure on him. Then Greg Grugan, who has interviewed Bill King, Tony Busby, Sue Lovell, and Dwight Boykins, he's covering the election. I decided to reach out to him. He responded very immediately, and we set up an interview a month ago, literally 4 weeks ago from yesterday. We went to Fox 26. I'll show you guys the picture. You can see me and Greg in studio. You can even see that he liked the picture, so he's aware that I'm sharing this with my audience. Like, hey, here I am with Greg Grugan. And then a week passed, and the interview didn't air. And I started to get suspicious and wonder, why did Greg film our interview on a different set than he usually films with the other candidates? If you look at his show called What's Your Point, you can see it's a totally different set. That's when I first got suspicious. Then, as I talked to him, I realized he had no real plan to put this interview out. And then a week passed, and then 2 weeks passed. So then I started calling Susan Schiller, who is the news manager at Fox, a news director, I'm not sure her full title, and talked to her about the situation, and I made it clear to her, I'm not asking you to release the full 20-minute interview with me and Greg. All I'm asking is for what's required by the FCC's equal time rule, which says that if a candidate like myself reaches out to the station and says, hey, you guys gave Bill King time from 7 to 8, you gave him a 7 to 8 minute interview, I want that same time. And that's what I've done. Since they've interviewed me, they've interviewed Sue Lovell and released it. They've interviewed Dwight Boykins and released it. And now they've interviewed Bill King again and released it. So he's interviewed 3 more candidates and released them while they have held on to my interview. I ran into Greg 2 times in the last week at different interviews and asked him what's going on. And he acts nice to my face and acts like a nice gentleman and this and that. And he's like, you're being aggressive, but you're being polite. Thank you for that. But ultimately, they still have made no moves to put the interview out. I've contacted Susan Schiller. I told her we have a full copy of the interview and that we're going to release it. And her whole tone changed. She said, well, of course you're free to release it if you want, but how did you guys get a copy of the interview? Thankfully, Miriam recorded it because we knew that something like this might happen. And yesterday at the Millennials Forum, I ran into Greg, and he finally made it clear why they won't play my interview. After I kept pressuring him and saying, why won't you release it, man? Like, I'm just asking for you to release what you're required to do by the FCC regulations. And again, it's a bunch of status government stuff. I don't like to use it, but if I got to use it to pressure these people, then I will. And Greg said, you're not going to pressure us. You're not going to shame us into playing the interview. And I told him, I get that. I get that you're not going to do your job, but I'm not asking for anything special. I'm asking you to follow the rule, which says that you give equal airtime. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. Now it's on you. And he basically exploded and said, you're not a viable candidate, okay? You're not a viable candidate. How about that? So get a lawyer, do whatever you have to do, And then when I told him straight up, Greg, I don't know if this is coming up from above you or what, but I know you're the one with degrees and with the journalism education. I've trained myself. I've learned from being on the streets and learning about journalism. And I'm having to tell you and Fox 26 how to do your job. And he didn't like that. He got upset with that and said, okay, now you're being rude. Well, I'm sorry, Greg. I'm being real. Like I told you last night to your face. Maybe at one point in your career, you used to be a real journalist and challenge systems and actually do journalistic work. Now you are far from it. I don't know what you are now, but you're not a journalist. And most of these people are not real journalists. So I am seeking an attorney to help me. We are working with some folks. We're trying to get an attorney. We're going to file an FCC complaint. We're going to file a lawsuit against Fox 26 as soon as possible, because if I don't do something, it's going to keep happening the next candidate, the next election, the next candidate, over and over and over, because these people think that they can push you around if you don't have millions of dollars and you don't have a massive team behind you. Well, we do have a team behind us, and we have people who are not going to let this go away, Greg. So I just want you guys to understand this that you're about to watch is the interview that Fox 26 refused to release on TV. 1 month ago, it was filmed, and it still has not made it to their website, to TV, or anything. So we're going to release it in full, and I hope you guys will share it with your friends and let them know that Fox 26 Studios, Susan Schiller, and Greg Grugan, they are not representing the people. And I will be putting their emails and their phone numbers below if you'd like to contact them and let them know how you feel about this. And I appreciate your support, because I can't do this without you. This is the kind of BS that I have to stop campaigning to let you know what's going on. I'd rather be focusing on getting out there, talking to people, and focus on the solutions, but I have to stop and record 2 videos about being censored by different groups and local media. So please check it out, share it with your friends. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Fox 26, hey, you're running for mayor. That's a big undertaking. An undertaking I'm sure you put a lot of thought into. Why are you doing it?
So, well, thanks for having me, Greg. I appreciate it. So the reason I'm doing this is, well, there's multiple reasons. I think like anybody motivated to take this step to run for mayor in the 4th largest city in the country probably has spent some time thinking about it. For me, I spent a good few months consulting with friends and others who've been involved in political races in other cities and states, asking their thoughts, their opinions, for them to look at the issues that I was figuring I was going to focus on, and also talking to friends in the community. And overwhelmingly, people encouraged me to do this and felt that what I have to offer and what I'm bringing to the table and my experience both in the journalistic area as well as being involved in the community through tons of types of activism and just putting my time, my hands in the dirt, if you will, literally, and getting involved, that I could bring that experience to the table and also seek to talk about issues that are not typically raised in local elections, if anywhere at all in Texas. So that's why I'm doing this. I think that I can bring something that hasn't been done before, particularly maybe bring a message that hasn't been seen, and a message that I would say that hasn't been represented typically in any of these races. And myself coming from a background, as I said, of journalism and activism, but also having spent time in the Texas criminal justice system 15 years ago. I was addicted to drugs and I went to prison, and I had a life-changing experience that basically shifted everything I was doing when I was 20 years old. And when I went through that experience, got out, and have been on this path since then, trying to better myself, better my community, and get to know the world around me. And in that process, and through learning journalism, I've seen that there's quite a bit of corruption there. The world is not always what we've been told it is, and I think that it takes somebody being willing to say these things out loud in a public platform to get more people to think about them if we're ever going to achieve any sort of realistic change.
You talked about non-traditional topics that don't get enough discussion. For instance, what is something you believe needs to be considered and discussed more?
So we have on my website, DerrickBroze.com, where people can see the full platform, but we have 9 main issues that we're raising, as well as talking about more traditional things like, say, flooding, violence, community safety, things of this sort. But some of those core points that I think are important to recognize are ending the drug war, and specifically decriminalizing cannabis in the city of Houston. And again, I speak as somebody who's spent time in the criminal justice system, and so it's important for me to talk about that issue, not only because in the last 2 years since the Harris County DA Ken Mogg has had a diversion program, the county has saved $35 million just in those 2 years, and that's only a small diversion program where people are still ticketed, they have to go to a class and pay a small fee, but they don't go to jail, they don't do that. As they finish that, then everything gets taken care of. That's saved $35 million alone from not locking up non-violent people who are just smoking cannabis, using cannabis, maybe some medicinally as well, for medical reasons. And so that just shows a glimmer, I think, of what is possible if a mayor stepped into the position working with the DA and said, I'm going to put a police chief in place who has no interest in continuing the drug war, starting with cannabis, and also encouraging and being welcoming to more cannabis-related businesses, whether that means hemp. Industrial hemp is just legalized in Texas in the last couple months. Houston could become a hub for that. So we have a plan that we're calling Hemp Houston that takes on these issues, ending the drug war, decriminalizing cannabis, as well as tackling the fact that the jails are still filled with people who have committed nonviolent crimes and who have been locked up under the drug war. And as somebody who is a felon, 15 years to the day of being locked up, I still can't find an apartment in certain parts of Houston because I'm a felon. This happened when I was 20 years old. I'm 34 now. And so there are various issues related to the drug war we want to tackle, but it starts with cannabis. We also want to plant hemp along the bayou, and this could be used not only for creating more green space in Houston to address the flooding issue, because we have such a lack of green space, which is contributing to the flooding along the bayou. We've worked with the Buffalo Bayou Partnership and talked to them about why we can't grow plants there. Well, it erodes too quickly. The soil is soft and it just falls away. Hemp grows very fast, doesn't need a lot of water in most circumstances. So there's a lot of reasons that we could take the cannabis plant, we could decriminalize it, we could help free up space in the jails, also save money that could redirect the police department towards actual violent crimes, human trafficking, things of this sort, and you could start addressing the flooding issues, take on some of the environmental issues. So that is kind of one issue itself, but it tackles a lot of different problems. One other main thing I'd like to mention is that I am the only candidate that is listening to the constituents in Houston who are concerned about the move towards being a smart city, what is known as the 5G network, the fifth generation of cell phone technology. And without getting lost too much into the weeds, there's four main concerns with this technology. Health concerns. Over 200 scientists from around the world have called for a moratorium until further studies. There's been recent studies in the U.S. that have maybe given us pause to why we shouldn't rush forward. There's also privacy concerns. I've interviewed personally lawyers with the American Civil Liberties Union who said that 5G could, quote, be a wolf in sheep's clothing as far as surveillance is concerned. There's also environmental concerns. They're going to have to cut down tons of trees all around Houston to make this happen. And there is also the loss of local power concerns. That 2 years ago, the state of Texas passed a law. The FCC also passed a law that says localities like Houston have no say in this rollout, where these towers are placed, how much to charge, what they can look like aesthetically. And in order for 5G to work, they have to be installed every 100 to 200, at max 500 feet for this seamless network to work that's going to bring driverless cars and smart city and smart grid that the current mayor is very much promoting and working with the telecom industry about. But I'm the only candidate that's taking those concerns and listening to people who are going to city council. I myself have been going to council for over a year talking about this, and I discovered the mayor was given the 5G Wireless Champion Award from the telecom industry, the CTIA, last summer, and that was right before Houston started rolling out 5G. He's partnered with Verizon, partnered with Sprint. So as I said, that issue is privacy, it's health related, it's environment, it's loss of local power, local control, local say, and there are a number of people in Houston who are very concerned with those issues among others, and every single one of the issues we're talking about, I can say I'm the only one talking about them in this race.
You have been able to reach what you call non-traditional voters. How's that happening, and what are they telling you?
So again, back to the fact that we're talking about these issues that others aren't raising. We are, I think, so as I said, I'm 34. I think maybe my youth may lend itself towards some people being interested because they see it's a younger, person in the race. So there's some level of that, but I think it comes back to the issues. Honestly, the issues that we're talking about, the emails that we've been receiving, the messages to our Facebook page, the people who are discovering our campaign and coming out to our events, our meet and greets, and hearing me speak at the forums that I've been involved in, are saying thank you for talking about this. Just this morning I was at a forum and somebody said thank you for talking about hemp, and they went on into their own story, how it relates to their life and their experiences. We're talking about things that people are not used to hearing on their local TV news networks or in their local political race, even in a city as big as Houston, which to me I think is a big mistake politically, and from the media perspective, I think that giving coverage to a campaign like ours would actually help people to hear more about important issues and maybe encourage other folks to talk about them. So when people come to us, they say, I've never voted before, I've never been, I'm not even registered locally, but I'm going to vote for you. And that's a message that we keep hearing time and time again. We've been campaigning since May. I am going to be on the ballot in November. My name's going to be on there with everyone else. And we're just, building this grassroots movement. We're trying to reach out to the campuses. We're trying to reach out to anyone and everyone in Houston who wants to hear a message that perhaps they haven't heard before.
You have been in a number of forums, and you've heard the incumbent attacked by some of your fellow challengers. And you talked about your view that we have corruption within this city government. Do you generally agree with those who are talking about pay-to-play politics and the other criticisms against the Turner administration?
So I do. I'm thankful. There was, like you said, there was a forum the other night, and everybody got stuck in attacking each other. I tried to stay out of the fray, although I think it's important to pull this out. But people do want to know that there's corruption, and maybe by now people in Houston, I think, are getting the picture. But they want to see who's going to provide the solutions for it. So it is a good thing to see the other candidates talking about pay to play, talking about some of the different examples that they've given. I was just giving an example about 5G and the telecom lobby, and we could go on and on about different examples. Now, what I will say on that topic, though, is another part of our platform is to reduce the power of the mayor. I want to actually amend the charter of the city of Houston to take away some of the power of the mayor and to essentially decentralize it to give it back to the city council. Again, I've been involved in the community for the last 10 years. I've been to city council for homelessness issues, for police violence, for water quality issues, and for 5G and a range of topics. And time again, I've seen and I've talked to council members that have told me the mayor has too much power. The mayor has the power to decide what issues get officially put on the agenda. So if you go to speak at city council, if you're not official, you're typically at the end, at the end of the day, nobody's really paying attention. And even if you are on the agenda, if the mayor is not interested, they can essentially veto and slam anything down. So I've had situations where city council members are like, I'm right there with you, I care about that issue. But I can introduce a resolution, but the mayor is going to block it immediately. That's something that shouldn't be happening. I mean, that's way too much power for this city to have to deal with one person with that much power, whether it's Mayor Turner, Mayor Parker, or whoever Mayor Broze. I want to be able to give that power back to the city council, and ideally that would amplify the voices of Houstonians, because you would know when you call or you email your council member, they now have some incentive to act and to say, hey, I'm hearing about this 5G thing, or I'm hearing about cannabis decriminalization. Can we do something on this? And along with that, we would want it to initiate a change that would do 1/3 of the city council, so 6 out of the 16 members, if they say my constituents are concerned about X, Y, and Z, that it should automatically be placed on the agenda for discussion. And then from there, if there's support, it could eventually be voted on. But as it stands right now with the current mayoral position, just itself, that is easily blocked, just like any other issue. So whether you care about flooding, homelessness, what have you, if the mayor is not on board with you, they can shut it down.
Yeah, there is kind of an imperial quality of the strong mayor system, particularly for those who have a penchant for projecting power, and this mayor certainly has been that way. I know it's a traditional issue, but it's one that's been on everybody's mind. I know you mentioned it's on your website, it's part of your policies, but flooding gets talked a lot about. Your thoughts there and your plans there. What do you bring to the table?
So yeah, absolutely, flooding is hugely important. My partner, her family was impacted during Harvey, lost their whole home, communities. I've been right there and I've seen it firsthand. And here we are 2 years later. We have people in our campaign and volunteers who still haven't been helped from Harvey. And one of the reasons they're supporting us is because we're actually talking about it. Real basic, I think, clean up the bayou, starting with that, in addition to the other waterways. None of the other ideas that I see being put forth or have been put forth in the past involve that basic step of starting to clean out the vehicles, the furniture, all kinds of things that have been put into the bayou or sucked in there due to flooding and other things. They're not the only problem. We have street flooding as well as the storm surge that comes in, but cleaning up the bayou is a big step to that. And as I was saying earlier about planting hemp along the bayou, if you plant industrial hemp, you could create a new industry in Houston for that type of farming, but also that hemp can grow quick enough to get roots into the bayou and to drink up lots of water, just like a bamboo and other plants like that. So we have some plans to do that. It's also part of an overall regreening of the city and bringing in more community gardens, more urban farms, more green spaces, which will help with drinking up that, because the problem is we live in an area that is very close to sea level, and some folks might not say this is a very smart political answer, but we live in a city that is unsustainable. And depending on the direction the climate's going or what people believe in on that particular issue, we're moving in a direction where there are increasingly chaotic storms, and we might need to start thinking more proactively and long-term in a realistic fashion, as opposed to just applying Band-Aids on a situation that's not going to go away anytime soon.
As mayor of the city of Houston, you would have something like 3,500 firefighters, 7,000 or 8,000 first responders in total, counting the police. Do you feel like the community has been well served by our Houston Police Department?
By the Houston Police Department? I think that if I was to become mayor, every single department that you just mentioned, from the fire department to the emergency services and to the police department, I would be interested in doing a full audit, not only a financial audit of these departments, but in general an audit of what's going on, what's been taking place in the past administrations, to want to know, if me coming in can truly work with these departments. And I definitely feel that way towards the Houston Police Department. I think one of the things I've called for is an audit of the surveillance tools that are available to the Houston Police Department. As a journalist, my work has focused on surveillance, and here in Houston, I helped reveal a few years back through open records requests and by questioning the chief about the use of Stingray cell phone surveillance tools by the Houston Police Department, which was approved by the City Council and this current administration and previous administrations. And there are tools and other tools that I've found that I don't think Houstonians know about, facial recognition tools, and things that it seems like a few years back, I remember Houstonians voting to end red light cameras because they were concerned about similar things. But in that time since then, we've taken DHS federal money, and there are now thousands and thousands of cameras around the city. There are things that I think we should just have a discussion about. This is another area where I believe Houstonians haven't had a say. Do we want the police department to have these tools? If so, let the people vote that and decide. So I'm not calling for a ban on surveillance or anything of that sort, but again, to give the people a voice in that. I think you take an audit of all the surveillance tools available to the police department and let the people decide whether they think they should have access to those. We hear about them, how they work. Also take an audit and a complete check of the department to look for any more officers who might have been involved in activity like former now Officer Gerald Goins and this whole Harding Street raid. We're also calling for the end of no-knock raids as far as the police department is concerned. I do get to pick a police chief, and I'm going to pick a police chief that has no interest in continuing the drug war, that has no interest in predictive policing, as some other candidates have called for, and is more focused on being integrated with the community and a part of the communities that they patrol and that they're a part of, and also redirecting those resources towards human trafficking, towards violent crime. So, yeah, I want to have a relationship that is something that can be compatible and can be functional, for the city. I'm not trying to come in and point fingers or be anti-cop or anything like that, but I absolutely do think it should be the duty, and I think it's a big slap in the face to the family of the Tuttles, particularly with this no-knock raid, that the current mayor and several council members stood with the police chief when we now know that they were lying about what happened. And since then, and according to the family, the police chief, the mayor, none of them have made any attempt to reach out to the family to communicate anything to them. So I think that's a shame, that these issues are just being brushed aside instead of talked about. And I've been to the house on Harding Street. I went there, I talked to the family and talked to the neighbors. These are issues that we care about, and I want to find a way to work with the police department and work with police like I have an aunt in the family who was an HPD in the 90s who joined because I know she has a good heart and cares about the community and wants to get involved. And I know there are people out there who, that's why they're in the cops and the police department. I want to work with those people, and I want to help get rid of those who, have other interests.
Last question. This mayor has been in open warfare with his fire department. Fire department where wages lag behind comparable cities substantially. Dallas, San Antonio. The battle is now extended into court. How would you solve that?
So, respect the will of the voters. I mean, I understand the city is in a massive deficit, and this is because the city is being mismanaged. The funds are not going. We could go all day about the drainage fee. Funds are not going here. People know this by now. I think people are pretty aware that the city is not functioning. And so we have an issue where when I question the mayor about this, is there any department that you can cut from? Is there any other programs that we could, get to help pay the firefighters? His words, I'm scraping the bucket. We're already scraping the bucket. Okay, well, if you put surveillance tools up for a vote for the people of Houston, maybe they decide they don't want those millions of dollars in those contracts. If you find out more, we put a moratorium on 5G until there's actual local studies and environmental impact assessment, until the public has a chance to speak on it. If they decide they don't want that, then you're also saving millions of dollars. As I said, the diversion program, not even complete decriminalization, saved $35 million in 2 years. So what happens if we go even further? We welcome cannabis businesses, industrial hemp, things of this sort. We have a huge medical district that could be put towards those. I mean, I'm talking about something that may sound radical to some, but to me, it's common sense in embracing the opportunities that are right here in front of us. And all those, just those three issues that I mentioned there, we end up with millions of dollars. The city ends up with millions of dollars of revenue. Firefighters, other things, paying off this budget, actually getting back to somewhere that might make sense. And I don't think it's as difficult as a problem as we're seeing. And unfortunately, it has become political, and the mayor has chosen to fight it out in the courts, and the city is suffering because of it.
Derrick Broze, thanks for coming to Fox 26. Hope to have you back.
Thank you for having me, Greg.
Stay right